Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jeremy from JE Recording. Finally getting around again to doing another tutorial, and this time it has absolutely nothing to do with This Is Hardcore. It's completely, totally different direction, just to kind of show some of the other stuff I work on. This is actually by hip-hop artist I've been working with a lot over the years, Spec Kay, featuring Maritza Merck. Tracks 96. He just released it on Tuesday. Let's go over his Instagram page, specialk.com, I believe it is. It's on Spotify, Apple, Tidal, all the usual platforms. So go check it out. I just wanted to do a mix breakdown for this track and just kind of give you guys an idea of what I do for something that's not a live hardcore band. Anyway, make sure you head over to my website, jerecording.com. Email me if you guys want me to mix or master your tracks, jerecordingnj@gmail.com. And yeah, when I get into this. So, usually, Kareem, who's Spec Kay, he does most of the stuff himself in Ableton, and he'll print me out stems, and I'll just import them into Pro Tools. It's a pretty good system. He makes sure that all the tracks, I edit it, but when I get all the tracks, they're all consolidated, so they all start at the same time. I don't have to go in and do any crazy editing or match up try and match up the timing of all the instruments. It's all good to go, so I could just really start mixing. I'll trim some of the tracks, but so you can see I got the drums. I like having the drums as separate individual elements, not just a stereo pair of drums. Same things with like all the low bass stuff, the pads, the synths, samples, whatever he's got in here, vocals, all separate tracks. When I get like a lot of hip hop and even some other stuff, like they'll just send you stuff to mix. If they send you like mix down files, it's not the best stuff to work with. So just to get into it, there's not a lot of processing going on. The tracks themselves came in sounding really good, and I've seen a lot of like hip hop tutorials on YouTube and stuff, and people just completely like overcook the tracks. You'll look and they'll have like 8 plugins. Like if you need 8 plugins on a track, then you fucked up somewhere and you need to go back and like re-record it, because there should be no reason why I need to come in and like put 8 different plugins and do 1,000 little things to make it sound good. I don't know. And maybe it's just like I got more of an old school mentality when all people had to mix on was like an analog console, which was just a gate and EQ, a compressor. Maybe they had a couple, pieces of outboard gear, but those type of records sound better to me than like all this shit today where, it's like 8 de-essers and auto-tune and, all this crazy stuff. It's like, I just use some basic tools to get it to sound good. And that's really all most people should need. I don't know. That's just my philosophy, I guess, when it comes to mixing. Going back again, so starting from the top, mix bus, no matter if it's hip hop, rock, acoustic, I always kind of start from the same place. This is done all in the box. So, if you've seen some of my older videos, or if some of you guys know me, I had like an analog summing setup with stereo analog compressor. I still have a stereo analog compressor, but because I had moved, my studio was kind of in a temporary setup, and I didn't have any of my analog gear hooked up. So I was just went at it and mixed this in the box. I could get the same results either way. Especially big shout out to Plugin Alliance, because their plugins are awesome. And like, especially like once they came out with their Shadow Hills mastering compressor, that was like when I really said I don't really need to use analog outboard anymore, because this thing sounds just as good. So if you see here, I got the both compressors in, the opticals just grabbing it a tiny bit, and then the discrete one, which is more like your SSL style compressor, that's doing most of the heavy lifting. And I'll kind of play through a little bit of the track here and let you hear it. Let me get to a section that's got a little more like heavy bass to it or something, just so you guys could hear that.
Players in the play with the scissors that you make, what you carry to your grave like a running back. I need the chili in the bag, that's a cul-de-sac. Yep, stepping up my weight, that's a heart attack. I'm the killer to the brain like a lace pack. I reside where you keeping all your hate at. America's nightmare, you can't erase that. Sweet motherfucking dreams, it's Kareem. Got the shorty hooked, I don't even need the lean. Shout out to Diana, but the boy been supreme, you know the team.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want, what you really want, what you really want, I want.
So as you can see, neither compressor's really hitting too hard, but they're both kind of, the optical's a little bit slower and the discrete's a little bit quicker, and it just kind of really holds the track in place. And when it's out, it sounds, I don't know, it just sounds kind of flat to me. The next thing I got is another one of my favorite Plug-in Alliance plugins. This is Dangerous Back EQ. This is just good for like an overall lift. You can see here it's just basically a high end lift and low end lift and a high shelf, low shelf. So you can see here I'm just doing a tiny bit of low cut at the super sub lows. Low shelf up about 2 dB, high shelf at 3.4K up about 4 dB. This is really, I'll play this real quick and bypass it, and you can really hear what kind of difference this plugin makes.
Players in the play with the scissors that you make, what you carry to your grave like a running back. I need the chili in the bag, that's a cul-de-sac. Yep, stepping up my weight, that's a heart attack. I'm the killer to the brain like a lace pack. I reside where you keep it.
So you can really tell with that's doing most of my heavy lifting for EQ across the whole mix. That's why I do a top-down approach with a master bus EQ, and so I don't have to go to each individual track and boost the top end and low end, you know, however many dB. Is when I'm setting my levels and I get like a rough mix going, I put this EQ in first and really balance it and get everything popping, and then I'll go to the individual tracks and kind of tweak individual things. Next to last thing in the chain here, again, Plug-in Alliance. This really, especially like I said, when it came to getting tracks to sound more analog without having to go through my analog summing, is the Lindell 80 for the Neve 80 series mix bus. Not doing anything really, just kind of pushing the input level a little bit just to give it some kind of analog distortion, and that's really it. And then the last thing in my chain is the slate tape machine. I always kind of keep it last because I keep it in on every song, but it doesn't get used on every song. You know, I'll drop it in once the track's like 75% done. I'll kind of put it in and see if it's helping or hurting the track overall, and in this case it was helping a lot, so I'll play and take it in and out.
Players in the play with the scissors that you make, what you carry to your grave like a running back. I need the chili in the bag, that's a cul-de-sac. Yep, stepping up my weight, that's a heart attack. I'm the killer to the brain like a lace pack.
So you can really hear it, especially in the low end. It makes, because of the analog saturation, it really helps a lot, and especially with hip hop. And I'll show you what when it gets to like the bass and stuff too. You know, it's more about getting good low end from like sub bass stuff, is more about bringing out the harmonics and not so much boosting. Like people boost like 60 hertz and crank it, and then you just end up with like a muddy mess. So the goal here is really with the bass is to get, you know, the harmonics. So when you're listening to it on, you know, in your car or on AirPods or whatever, that's when you'll really hear the analog saturation helps. Drums, so kick, nothing crazy, just a little bit of compression, and I love using the API EQ on drums. It gives it kind of that sharp attack. I'll bypass this in and out. Snare, again, same thing. This is the Waves version. I just brought out a little bit of the top end on this. That's all I really needed. All these drums get routed into my main drum bus, SPL twin tube. This is, again, just saturation, so the kick and it gets on your smaller speakers. You can really hear it more of the harmonics.
Players in the play with the scissors that you make, what you carry to your grave like a running back. I need the chili in the bag, that's a cul-de-sac. Yep, stepping.
Drum crush on this one. This is just in my default template. I didn't use anything on this. That's usually just 1176 in parallel. What I did use, and this is my favorite, is really a heavy distorted drum track. So you can see my drives up pretty high on this. Output's at the auto tone. I think, no, it's right in the center there. This adds a lot of, brings out the attack of the drum, so it really cuts through in like a dense mix, especially when this, you'll hear this heavy bass synths come in. It really makes a huge difference. Let me see if I can get to a section with that so you could hear how the bass plays with the drums.
Need the black and white.
Tell me what you want, what you really, really want, what you really want, what you really want, wanna.
So you could hear without the decapitator, it gets completely lost in the mix because the super subby bass eats up a lot of the space of the track, and the drums get kind of lost. But with the decapitator, it really brings that back out. And then all these drum buses get summed to a master drum fader, which just has, API. I like API for drums just because it makes everything sound a little punchier. And the BX limiter, it's not really limiting anything. I mainly use it more for this XL again, which is even more harmonic distortion. You'll hear me say that a billion times in all these mixes, but that's the sound of analog records, and that's really what helps out, makes a lot of tracks pop out. Bass. So let me solo this bass and play it back for you. So that's super subby bass. So what I did for that, again, harmonic distortion is very important. A lot of people will go in and just crank the low end, but really what gets people to hear it, and this is why I use this Revival plugin, is because this is basically just the shimmer and the thickness are just adding harmonics to that signal. So if I take this in and out, you'll hear it kind of disappears without it. And then I just have this compressor just to kind of hold it in place. Pro Q2, that's not really doing too much. Just cutting off the super low end, so you don't end up with a super muddy signal. And then probably just something about 200 just on because I check it on cheap speakers, probably something around there just helped it sound better on the smaller speakers. This other bass, that's just a higher, it's bass, but didn't really do anything. Again, just cut out the super subby low end so that doesn't take up space in the mix. There's a couple little fill pads here. That was just kind of in the background of this main pad. So that main pad kind of is the main sound, and this pad one just kind of fills in behind it. So this Messy CT5 is just some compression. Pro Q2, just taking out. A lot of times with samples and pads that get exported from Ableton, you get a little bit of junk noise in the low end. So I just cut that out so you don't hear it especially if it was a sample, if he was sampling from vinyl or from when you rip it from YouTube or people do kind of stuff like that, you end up with some garbage in the low end that just sounds nasty or just eats up space and shouldn't be there. Synths didn't do anything. People probably think I'm nuts, but a lot of times the track, especially more so with the stuff I get from Kareem, he's already got some of the sound baked in and it's kind of how he wants it. So I try not to go nuts. And again, I set an overall EQ on the mix so I don't have to necessarily go to each individual tracks and say, if I didn't have a master bus EQ, I may go into each individual synth and add a little bit of top end, add a little bit of top end, but because I'm mixing through, I start mixing through that overall mix bus change. That's adding the frequencies I need to these synths right off the bat, and I don't have to, go to each individual track and add that stuff in. Here's the main sample that kind of loops through the whole track. So DBX 160 that's my main compressor. It is in stereo mode. Sometimes I set it to dual mono, depending on what the sample is. If there's different instruments on the left and the right, I may do dual mono just so one side isn't over compressing the other side, but in this side, because it's just kind of like a piano looping, I just kept it in stereo. And then that feeds a Neve EQ, which is just taking out some super low end, adding a little bit of mids and adding a little bit of top end just to make that piano, because it's like an old school piano. There's a little bit of top end was missing from the sample, so just add that back in to make it pop out. All right. Main vocal track. This is probably where I did most of my tweaking, but again, not a crazy amount. First thing, de-esser. The Oasis de-esser is probably one of my favorite ones. That goes in first. Then the slate mix rack. This is doing a lot of processing, so especially for vocals, I don't think these were tracked through any compression. I think everything that I got from him was just flat, just basically mic into a pre into Pro Tools. So I'll take this off and you can kind of hear that. I should probably get to section of vocals, huh?
Hey, so I could go real deep, look past the superficial shit. Baking on the block and they acting hella militant. Every time I stop, I pray that I'ma do the yellow devil, putting in work overtime for the Diablo. But I really want the Lamborghini Countach. Try to see the game from both sides. The players in the play with the system.
So didn't sound like it was really tracked with any compression. So, and a lot of times anyway, I like doing 2-stage compression for vocals. So you'll see I got kind of a little bit of tube saturation from the London. Then that goes into a bit of a slower compressor just to kind of hold the if there's any errant words or anything like that pop in. This just kind of is like 2 or 3 dB of compression. That goes into my main EQ, which is this Neve style EQ, cutting out some low end and then adding a bunch of top end and mids to make his voice pop through. Then 1176, and then again adding harmonics to fill the whole thing out. And then because I'm adding a bunch of top end and harmonics, I went through another de-esser just to kind of shave some of that back off from adding the high frequencies in, just catching any other random S's. And then I like this vocal enhancer. It's not doing anything crazy. The enhancement's only at like 10%, but I'll play it and you could hear how much, it's kind of bringing out, again, the top end and some harmonics.
Okay, so I could go real deep, look past the superficial shit. Baking on the block and they acting hella militant. Every time I stop, I pray that I'ma do the yellow devil.
Really just brings the vocals up front. The doubles and the yells in the background, usually for those, I just end up, whatever I settle on my main vocal chain with the slate, I just copy that over. I may tweak the frequencies and the compression a tiny bit just to match it or bring it out a little bit more. The yells, I ended up having to use, I remember now, I ended up having to use this deverb because it sounded like he was standing, and I'll solo it. Wherever he was yelling is kind of like he was standing in the back of the room, so you're getting more of the room noise than the direct vocals, and this plugin is very good with kind of cleaning that sound up a little bit, so I'll play a little bit of that.
Take ignorant showing off a port. Real deep look past superficial shit. And it acting hella militant.
So it just kind of helps cut down on some of those reflections. And then for the hook vocals, I just ended up using the CLA Mix Hub. I just gotten that recently, and I always like the Slate 1176, the Waves 1176 compressor, and this is all built in. So her vocals sounded a little bit more processed.
Wanna. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want, what you really want, what you really want. Wanna.
So for this, just using the 1176 style compressor, bringing out some top end, and again, cutting out some super low end because you don't really need it for this style of vocal. Especially female vocal, there's really no information down in the super low end. Now those all get routed to, I should have said this for the lead vocals get routed to this bus. This is just a Neve style console. I toggle between the three. I ended up with the Neve on all these. Sometimes I end up with the EMI, especially for vocals. Again, this is just for a little bit of harmonic distortion to let the vocals pop out. That goes to a delay. And the plate reverb, I'll show you those settings real quick. The plate is the Slate. What is this one? I'll usually toggle through a couple settings to see which one I like. And this one I ended up with just kind of a little bit pretty short, bright digital plate. Width is just a little stereo width trick where everything is just slightly, both sides are slightly delayed differently. And that you do a send into that, and it makes the main vocal sound a little bit wider, especially hearing on headphones. Delay is just a tape delay. I don't even think it was set to a specific, eighth note delay. That's it. Nothing crazy. People will be like, that's why I say, if the tracks are recorded good, you shouldn't need 8 or 9 plugins to make something sound good. I don't think there's probably some automation in sections where, it's just the synth parts or, just riding the main vocal track. But for the most part, I try to keep it simple because, especially when, like I said, if you get tracks that were recorded well, you shouldn't need to reinvent the wheel and have to add hundreds of plugins to make something sound good. The focus is the song and making the song pop, and I'm hoping I accomplish that. So you guys have any questions or any comments, just shoot in the comment below. If not, try and do more of these tutorials when I can. All right, thanks.